Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the WSU Alumni Association's third annual Women's Leadership Summit. As mentioned previously, my name is Mariah Mackey, and I am proud to be your Associate Vice President for University Advancement and only the 6th Executive Director for the WSU Alumni Association since 1934, as well as its first female in this important role. As we kick off today's summit, it's important that we acknowledge WSU's locations statewide are on the homelands of Native peoples. The university expresses its deepest respect for and gratitude to these original caretakers of the region. Now, I'm excited to be joined by WSU's First Lady, Dr. Noel Scholes. This Women's Leadership Summit program was the brainchild of Dr. Scholes and WSUAA past president Jane Young. We are so grateful for this initiative and for Noel's support along the way. Thank you, Noel. Our panel moderator and WSUAA volunteer, Katie Kane. And our panelists today, including Lynn Aylesworth, Monica Murugesan, Savannah Navarro-Cressy, Elizabeth Shank, Shavinar Winters, and Whitney Ward. Thank you all, ladies, for joining us. We are so pleased that over 470 of you registered to join us today, and I want to thank you for your support of this important annual event. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing by visiting the Alumni Association's Video Archive Library. We're going to post the link to the video archive in the chat for you. Now, I have the pleasure of sharing a few things about the undeniably best alumni association in the country. First, whether you identify as parents, students, fans, alumni, faculty, or staff, you can take advantage of the WSU Alumni Association's award-winning virtual and in-person offerings, including regional events, book clubs, professional and personal development webinars, university lectures, national and international travel, wine events, and community service activities, most of which are free of charge. The WSU Alumni Association currently supports 54 active chapters and clubs with over 250 alumni volunteers around the country working hard to connect Cougs where they live. The team will put a link in the chat so that you can identify a WSU group near you. Each year, the WSU License Plate Program fuels our Student Alumni Association scholarships. Our alumni chapters select and award over $330,000 in scholarships each year. This year, we have a record number of applications from amazing student leaders. So thank you to each of you who display your Cougar pride with a WSU Cougar plate. Alumni Association membership also offers an ever-growing assortment of discounts and member services. To date, there are over 45,000 members in the Alumni Association. So thank you so much to our members for supporting amazing engagement initiatives like this to Cougs all over the world. Now for today, to ask questions during this summit, I'm going to ask that you please utilize the Q&A messaging system at the bottom of your control panel. The event hosts will relay questions to our speakers, and please note that we will try, but we may not have time to get to all of the questions asked. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce our panel moderator for this afternoon and one of my absolute favorite Cougs, Miss Katie Kane. Katie, go Cougs.
Go Cougs. I am absolutely delighted to be here and be your moderator. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am a director of technical program management at Walmart Global Tech, and I'm also the vice president of the board of directors for the Alumni Association. I'm also a 2014 graduate of WSU's Global Campus and a member of the Global Campus's Society of Distinguished Alumni. Again, I'm just thrilled to be here. Before introducing our wonderful alumni panel, I want to quickly share the results of our poll. So we have a lot of alumni here, considerable amount of staff, which is also wonderful. And I have a feeling they had to pick between alumni and staff. So this is a really great group of folks. And a lot of people right in either starting their career or in the middle of their career. So this should be a really interesting session for all of you. Let's see. Okay. So let me introduce our alumni panel to you. So our panelists today are Lynn Aylesworth. She is design and analysis engineer at Boeing. She's a 2020 graduate from WSU Everett. We have Monica Murugesan, global vice president at Schneider Electric. She's a 2015 graduate from Global Campus, the executive MBA program. Savannah Navarro-Cressy, acting manager of the Racial Equity Unit at the Washington State Office of the Attorney General, a 2020 graduate of WSU Tri-Cities. Elizabeth Schenk, executive director of environmental stewardship for Providence, a 2013 graduate from WSU Spokane. Shavnar Winters works with the Starbucks Government Affairs and Public Policy Group. She's a 2014 graduate from WSU Vancouver. And Whitney Ward, investigative reporter and co-anchor of CREM 2 for the 4, 5, and 6 o'clock evening newscasts, a 2001 graduate from WSU Pullman. While I'm asking the panelists to tell us a bit more about themselves, you get to get involved as well. So we want you all to think about what kind of questions you have as we go through this. But first, we're going to ask you to answer our second poll question, which should be up on the screen right about now. Perfect. So we know a little bit about each of our panelists, but let's find out some more. I'm going to start with Lynn. So Lynn, you are a 2020 graduate from WSU Everett and a design and analysis engineer at Boeing. What does a design and analysis engineer at Boeing do? And also let us know what your major was.
So my major was electrical engineering. I just started this role, so I'm still learning a little bit. I just started a month ago. I was an electrical engineer at Crane, and that was a lot of design on circuit cards and design in FPGAs. So I'm still learning what I do at Boeing, but it's going to be in the 777X and 787 displays, which I'm pretty excited about.
I can imagine. That does sound actually sounds really cool, actually. And as we fly around the world, we'll get to use some of the things that you work on, which is really exciting. Yes. Monica, so you're global vice president at Schneider Electric, and you graduated from the MBA program. So we already know what your major was there in 2015. But tell us a little bit about your role there at Schneider.
Thank you, Katie. My role in Schneider is leading the sustainability and the transformation in the energy landscape. So I help campuses, industries, and also residences, going from that traditional relying on the power grid for their full power, full energy, right? Going from there to energy independence of using solar and batteries and going towards that renewables. So that's where I lead the team in providing that energy independence and sustainability.
I think that's incredible. I mean, you're really part of cutting edge technology and where the whole world needs to go very quickly. It must be very, very exciting in that role. Savannah, you are an acting manager of the Racial Equity Unit at the Washington State Office of the Attorney General, 2020 graduate from Tri-Cities. So what does the Racial Equity Unit do? What kind of impact do they have? And what was your major?
I majored in U.S. history, And I use that degree every day, learning about or talking with all of the various divisions that we have about racial equity. So we have about 32 legal divisions, and I get to work with them with my very small team on developing racial equity goals and metrics, as well as implementing the use of racial equity toolkits into their day-to-day work. So I get to work in various areas of the law and get to interact with folks that are doing different types of work on the day-to-day, but the focus is mainly on racial equity.
I imagine that gives you a lot of sense of satisfaction of really contributing to the quality of people's lives.
Absolutely.
It's tremendous. Beth, Executive Director of Environmental Stewardship for Providence. And what was your degree when you graduated in 2013 from WSU Spokane?
Thank you so much. My degree was a PhD in nursing after having been a nurse for some time. And I had already had an interest in environmental stewardship, and that eventually allowed me to take the reins for environmental stewardship at all of Providence. And some of you may know Providence hospitals from the communities where you are, but you may not know that there's 52 hospitals and over 1,000 clinics, a university, a high school, and multiple spin-off companies in 7 Western states. So that's what I oversee, is the Environmental Stewardship Initiative, which is a carbon reduction initiative, as well as building climate resiliency in the communities we serve. Fabulous work.
Incredible, very exciting, and broad. It's just really cool. All right, Shavnar, Starbucks Government Affairs and Public Policy, a 2014 graduate. I graduated in 2014 as well, so woo, from WSU Vancouver. So tell us about your role and what your degree was in.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me. I studied public affairs when I was in college, and I'm actually what we would call a green bean at Starbucks. I'm very new, like Lynn. So I'm still learning my role, but essentially I study the processes that we have internally, and I evaluate our public policy agenda and help set it.
Very, very exciting. How long have you been? So how long have you been there? You said you're new.
How long have I been a green bean? About a month.
But okay. All right.
Super new, yeah.
If it's any consolation, I've been at Walmart for 1.5 years, and I am still like a little mini spark. So
It's
all good. And finally, Whitney Ward. So our investigative reporter from CREM 2, 2001 graduate from Pullman, I imagine college, from the Murrow College, just guessing?
Correct. Yes, of course. Yep. And I had an emphasis in broadcast journalism with a minor in English. And just like Savannah, I use my degree every single day. I was well prepared when I hit the ground running, and you know, I'm an investigative reporter here at CREM 2 News, which means I, you know, use documents. I dig into big problems or crimes or issues, and then I try to get answers. I try to hold people accountable. I try to ask questions of decision makers. I try to dig deeper into whatever these particular issues are, and sometimes it's able to, you know, get a resolution. Sometimes it's just bringing things and shedding light on problems that have been recurring. So it's a rewarding job, and I'm grateful for the position that I have.
Absolutely love that. One of my favorite things about the news actually is, you know, so many of the stories are just little snippets, but I love the investigative segments because you really do get to get a lot deeper into an issue and really educate yourself about what's going on in your community. So it's fabulous.
Thank you. It's one of the most satisfying parts of my job.
I bet. All right, so let me just remind all of our attendees that you too can ask questions. So I'm going to proceed through some that we've already selected, but make sure to add your questions also into the Q&A. There should be a link down to pop up the Q&A function down at the bottom of your window. All right, so we're gonna go back through the exact same order that we went before, so our panelists can all prepare. But Lynn, you're going to be on the spot first. So how did your experience at WSU impact the direction of your current career?
I think going to a smaller campus really helped. I had a lot of development in professional skills. I'm in engineering, so I'm, you know, introverted at heart. It really helped me kind of develop and push myself, especially joining ASWSUE and becoming president. I was able to kind of push myself into a more outgoing and development and professionalism. And then so it kind of led me to a career that I was able to actually voice my opinions and, you know, be more boisterous and things in meetings as well. I was able to get out in leadership and really just practice that communication skill that I didn't have much before.
I think it's so important for everybody to just take note of the fact that being able to speak up for yourself in a room of, you know, with your colleagues or with partners is so incredibly powerful. So it's wonderful to hear that that's something that you got confidence in.
Definitely.
Monica, same question.
So Katie, you mentioned that I went to Global Campus, right? But Pullman holds a special place in my heart, right? Like I grew up in a military family, so I never lived in one place. But Pullman, because of my employment, I lived in Pullman for 17 years. So Pullman holds a special place in my heart. And but when it comes to college, you know, I was looking for an executive MBA because I was 10 years into my career. So MBA or you know, other business program was not the right option for me. So executive MBA was the right option. And particularly I chose WSU because I could have that dual experience, right? Like I can have the global campus experience. I had classmates joining from Asia, from different backgrounds. There are people from industrial background, people from medical background, agricultural background. It was great experience to hear from different experts from different parts of the world and different fields. At the same time, I also enjoyed the experience of being in Pullman, which means I got some face time with my professors when I wanted. So that was really good.
That's fabulous. Sorry, I took a deep breath there. I was like, I mean, obviously I'm a global campus student as well, so I can relate very much to what you're talking about, just talking with people all over the world and really expanding your, I also majored in anthropology. So, you know, understanding other people's experiences and bringing that to bear is just really powerful. And I expect that in your role as an executive, that's been very, very helpful.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Sure. All right, so Savannah, what about your WSU experience sort of impacted your career?
Yeah, I would say that, well, I was a non-traditional student or a post-traditional student. And so I knew I wanted to go to WSU when I was at a community college. I was at YVC, go Yaks. And I knew that I wanted to be a part of something big. I wanted to be a part of something that was reputable, and I wanted to continue my education. So I knew that I wanted to be a Coug early on. My sister went to the nursing program and I followed in her footsteps. And while I was at WSU Tri-Cities, again, having a smaller campus, it really provided a lot of opportunities for me to get involved in leadership. So I was involved in student government, I was involved in clubs, I was involved in pretty much anything you can be involved in. So I enjoyed the experience of a smaller campus that gave me a lot of opportunities to practice my leadership, practice my listening skills, practice how to be wrong in a graceful way, which is all really useful now that I'm a racial equity analyst or working in a racial equity unit where we talk about race every single day. There's a lot of grace that's needed in that space, a lot of curiosity and a lot of patience that's needed to host those kinds of conversations. So I would say that my experience at WSU prepared me for the reality of the real world with practical access to leadership opportunities.
That we need to bottle that and have that be an explanation for why the smaller campuses can really benefit people. That's awesome. I love it. Beth. So obviously you're nursing.
Yeah. So I have an emblematic story that may help touch on why MSU or WSU has helped me in what ways. I had been I decided I was going to get my doctorate, my PhD, and I had been looking around and looking at different schools in the West, and because I live in Montana, and had come down to a couple of different options, and I was just about to make a decision to go to another school. I had not yet talked to WSU at the time. And a friend of mine, another nursing faculty, said, "You've got to talk to Dean Butterfield, Pat Butterfield, who was the dean at the time." And I had 3 weeks left, 3 weeks before I was about to start this other program. And I called her and said, "I don't know what to do, because this other school didn't have any experience in environmental stewardship and healthcare." I already knew that's what I wanted to do. I'd been doing that. I wanted to advance my education and my career. And she was very interested in this. And so she said, "If you could come over, I would love to show you the campus and have a conversation." So she met me on a Sunday afternoon. This is the dean of the program. And so I came over and met with her, talked with her, immediately saw what it meant to be a Coug, honestly, which was supportive and caring and incredibly capable and committed to students. And so I remember her saying, "Well, think about it. And, we can see what we can to get you in this fall. And so just give me a call this week." And I said, "I can tell you right now, I'd like to come here." And by Tuesday, she had it worked out. So it's just an example of the amazing support that I felt all the way through. It changed my life in so many ways. And I know I only have 2 minutes, so I'll stop there, but that gives you an idea. Thank you.
I love that. That's such a wonderful story. And I think it's so relatable for all of us. Absolutely. Shavner.
Yeah, I have to echo, Lynn, Savannah. I went to a smaller campus and I had so many opportunities. I sat on boards. I'm glad to see I'm not the only student government alum, but it was really hands down student government that really shaped my journey. I obviously do policy, so I guess the leap isn't hard to make, but I remember sitting in a room with some ASWSU colleagues, and we were trying to figure out how to address some complex problems and provide solutions for the student body that we served. And I just remembered how invigorated I was and how excited I was to be talking about trying to figure out really complex challenges. And I came alive in that moment. And it's something, that energy is something I take with me in my career. I love talking about the hard things. I love trying to tackle those really complex, but somehow incredibly nuanced public policy challenges that we face. And so that's really carried with me through college and into my career. And I use that energy every day.
I believe that wholeheartedly. Public policy is very complicated, and I'm glad that WSU gave you that experience early on. Whitney.
Last but not least, right?
Not at all.
So I graduated from WSU in 2001, and it just happened to be 3 months after 9/11. So I was in my senior year studying broadcast journalism when that happened. And certainly that was a time when everyone was watching the news. Everyone was trying to understand what had happened, and everyone was turning to that medium in order to get that information. So, I wouldn't say that it guided me. I kind of always knew that this was the direction that I wanted to go with my career, but it certainly solidified that this is where I wanted to be, and that was the job that I wanted. And I started out very small. My first job was in Bismarck, North Dakota, but I was still doing that same thing. And then as I've moved along and climbed the ladder a little bit, it always comes back to telling those same stories, reaching people in a way that matters to them, because what we're doing really does matter. And maybe not everyone at that particular moment resonates with every single story that you do, but I really do believe, and I still say this all the time, when big things happen like 9/11 or the Capitol insurrection or the war in Ukraine, whatever it is, or sometimes it's maybe a local issue like the train derailment in Ohio, I still believe that television is where people turn. And that is the first place that people want to get their information. Yes, we have social media. Yes, you can watch things on your phone. You can do all of that. And I think that's still going to stick around. That's not going away, but I don't think TV is either. And I think when big things happen, they find the people that they trust and they want to hear from them, because they're the ones that help them understand what's going on. So it's a privilege to be that person. It's a privilege to be part of the team that makes people understand why big issues or small issues matter to their everyday lives, matter to what's going on in their world, in their community. So, again, it's a privilege, and we take it very, very seriously.
I'm going to mix things up a little bit, and I'm going to stay with you because it really I think what you just described leads really well into our second question, which is, Could you share some of the most valuable leadership insights you've gained throughout your experience? I think you've touched on a little bit of that, but I'd love to hear a little bit more.
Yeah, so Lynn, I can relate to you a little bit. I'm more introverted by nature as well, but you know, I think people are always surprised to hear that, because this is such an interesting platform, such an interesting job that we put ourselves out there. It's not easy for me all the time, but this has certainly given me an avenue to express my opinions. I have a lot of those, and I have a lot of ideas. And so I definitely appreciate being able to have a platform. And again, being that trusted resource, that's something that takes time to build. You know, it doesn't happen overnight, and it happens with people watching every single day. And maybe they're not watching every single day, but maybe they catch a commercial that, you know, talks about what you're doing. And again, in those big moments, they're hungry for information, and it's different to see it on your phone than it is to see someone that you know, that you've probably seen at the grocery store, that lives right there in your community, who's, you know, walking the walk every single day. So, you know, leadership, there are a lot of great managers out there, far fewer great leaders. And so, you know, across the board, I think leadership comes down to just leading by example. You're in the trenches along with everybody else. You're not afraid of the hard work. You're not afraid of, you know, like Savannah said, making mistakes, doing it with grace, acknowledging where you know, still have work to do, your weaknesses, and being part of a team that, when together, is much, much stronger than, you know, trying to do it all by yourself. So, you know, I think that the role that I'm in right now didn't come right away. And again, that's part of building trust within your community, but also building your skills and continuing to persevere, even if things are difficult, even when people in the community, you know, hate everything that you say, because there's a lot of that right now. And it's an interesting time to be doing this particular job, but I think you just keep going. You walk the walk, you prove that you're in it for the long haul, and you just keep going. You keep your eye kind of on the long game, on the goal, and eventually you kind of break through.
Yeah, terrific. Lynn, so let's continue that thread with you. What are some of your most significant leadership insights?
I think I've discovered that being uncomfortable with new opportunities has really been where I've been. I was kind of out of my comfort zone running for president for student government. I am now kind of in that uncomfortable position where I'm in a new job. I don't know anybody. I think it just is more rewarding in that way. You can kind of figure out your path, and I think just knowing that you have an opportunity that can benefit your career or your professional growth really helps. And I think that's the most valuable thing I've learned.
Yeah, all excellent point. Monica, so as an executive, I'm sure you have a different perspective, or I'm sure you share a lot of these same ideas, but what else do you see at your level?
So leadership is, you know, the way I look at it, right? Like there are many even individual contributors who make great leaders, right? Like leadership comes in with the way people want to follow you. People trust you, and they are inspired by what you say and what you do. And that's where the leadership comes in. And that comes with, like Whitney mentioned, leading by example, getting in the details and not just saying it's due and then you get out of work, but when the team is working till late night, right? That's not how it works. You are there with the team, and the team trusts you, and the trust is mutual, and you trust them as well. And that's how the leadership builds. It is with mutual respect and mutual trust, and how the team is willing to follow you. And you know, it's a servant leadership mixed with being bold, in the sense of, when you have an idea or when you have an innovative idea, you are not afraid to test it out. You're not afraid to, let's try it out. If it works, it's a success. If it doesn't work, we're going to learn a lesson from it and move on, right? That boldness is what people are looking up to in their leadership. And that is something is very important, as we continue growing in our careers, in our family. It's important to show them, I'm here for you, and we're going to go try it out. It's always a lesson learned or success. There is no failure.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So Savannah, in the work that you do, there's a lot of sort of uncharted territory too. So you get a lot of that kind of being tip of the spear, if you will, on a lot of these kind of conversations. How does that influence what you do?
Yeah, I was thinking as Monica, Lynn, and when you were talking, that there's like three main things or components of leadership that I think are essential to my job, but I learned while I was at WSU, which is authentic relationship building with your team. And that's the people that are reporting to you, but also to the people that you report to or that you're partnering with. And sometimes that authentic relationship building requires a level of vulnerability. And so you got to get comfortable with that as well. Another thing, and this is related to being comfortable with the unknown. You have to be really comfortable with the unknown and not think of it as an opportunity for failure, but an opportunity to do something. And failure is just an avenue of learning what that path might be. And part of that is not knowing everything. It is okay to not know everything. You have other people on your team or within your organization that do know, that thing that you don't know. So relying on the expertise of others, elevating the expertise of others. And then when it's time for yourself to shine, don't be afraid to do that. You have to say, people won't know what you're good at or what you're able to contribute if you don't speak up. As a Latina, as a Mexican-American woman, sometimes it's very difficult to talk about myself and what I've done. I've been, I would say, forced to learn how to do that at WSU through the women that were around me who modeled that or who would speak up and say, oh, Savannah did X, Y, and Z thing. I would never have said that in that space, but they were able to do that. So now I practice doing those things with myself, but I also practice doing that for my team if they're not doing it, if they're maybe a little nervous. So I think part of that, all of those pieces intersect with one another, but it's that authentic relationship building and the fact that you don't have to know everything and getting comfortable in that unknown.
Absolutely, 100%. Beth, what leadership skills do you tend to use on a regular basis, or how do you see this?
Well, I would say all of those that everyone has said so far, they're all great reminders and suggestions about almost the responsibility of leadership as well as the opportunity of leadership. And I'm grateful for that. I would add a few more. I would say, think big. I think this is something WSU does and help to teach me too. Why shouldn't we all try to change the world? I mean, we are trying to change the world. I can hear this in us to make it better and more fair, more sustainable in my case. Also that, as they say, life is a marathon, not a sprint. So don't get scared off about these big challenges and help to pace myself. That's always, I'm an impatient person. I'm always wanting the answer today or yesterday for tomorrow. But knowing that I can both be waiting and keep my foot on the pedal is helpful. I don't have to idle and not do anything, knowing that change doesn't happen overnight. Another thing is to translate. I'm in a world of always working with people from all areas. Healthcare, it brings all comers, every kind of person, every kind of education level, literacy level, political view, whatever. And so I always have been in the habit for years now of talking really very generally to lots of people so that lots of people can hear. But it's such technical work. I mean, part of what I'm doing from measuring carbon reduction is technical work, and it's also inspirational work. It has to be something that inspires people because I'm asking people to change always, wherever I go. And so I think that is important. And a thing that also reminds me of my doctoral work is being data-driven and evidence-based. I mean, that's something that's true in all of healthcare, but to really understand how can I make sure that it's accurate, that the sources are good, that it's high quality evidence, that the statistics actually work, and that sort of thing. I think that's important because legitimacy comes from being able to back up one's what I'm saying. And then another thing I would just add is to have fun. We have to do that as leaders. And I think that helps build our relationships. It helps other people identify what fuels them. When we can help others find purpose and meaning in their work, that's a gift. And also it helps them be more, you contribute more fully to the team. So I think that's something, and that's something Providence does really well. And I'm grateful to have that surrounding me, and that helps fuel me too. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Shavnar, so what kind of, and I'm curious because you are a green bean, what leadership skills do you really hearken to? What do you implement as a new person entering a really interesting field? How do you get started there?
Super fair question. I just want to say I'm loving the consistency across the board, and I'm here for it. So as a green bean, one of the best pieces of advice I got when I was in college was from an advisor. She was encouraging me to apply for my first student government position, and I was like, I'm not qualified for that. I don't know how to do that. And she was like, do it. You know it. You got it. And I did. I went for it and I got it. And basically, she really showed me that there's this comfort zone and there's a challenge zone around it, and then there's a danger zone. But I love to focus on getting into that challenge zone. I've grown so much over my career. I've learned so many things by pushing myself into that space of, can I do this? We're going to give it a shot. And so just across the board, that's something I've kind of picked up on, and that's definitely something I use in a new role. Like, is this the person I talk to? Well, we're going to go ahead and talk to them about this and see how it goes. Another one of my mentors, I don't think he loves that I associate him with this phrase, but he says, if you're going to fail, fail big. So that's something I've taken to heart when I'm trying something new. It's just another reminder to put myself out there into my challenge zone. And so as a newbie, as a green bean, I'm challenging myself. I'm also challenging myself to not shrink. I know sometimes I'm a little bit of an introvert, surprisingly, but it's also being in a new space. You don't want to be too much. You don't want to be too loud. You don't want to be seen. And so I'm trying to be the most authentic version of myself. I'm a firm believer that the world needs you. It needs the version of you as you are. It needs what makes you quirky and what makes you laugh, what makes you sad, what makes you happy, whatever passion that fuels you. I think you need to bring to the workspace with you, bring it along in your career. It's something that I'm trying to lean into more as I get more established in my career and myself. And I think that's something you can work on no matter what point of your career you're in. So I think those are the big things, but just career specific, I would say be flexible, be fluid, and change is inevitable. Sometimes it's unwanted and sometimes it is hard. But being able to adapt to change is really, really important. I think that's across careers, but especially in government affairs and public policy. You think one day you're going here, and then you're here the next day you're going there. So being able to incorporate that into your professional and personal life has been really helpful for me.
I'm going to circle back to you on this in a moment. So, but I'm going to go back to Beth really quick for our next question, because you said something about not being scared of the big challenges. And so this other question of like, do you have a story of how you developed that resiliency in the face of challenges?
Well, yes, partly I'd say from many failures, but I don't see failures as failure, like something went wrong. Failures are opportunities. I remember one faculty member, this was not from WSU, it was my prior work, said, whenever you get no for an answer, you're one step closer to yes. And I think that's true, because you have to go back and reframe and rethink and try again, and it makes your product or your idea or whatever you're putting forth better. So I think that's been important. I would also say I've been fortunate enough, eventually, this took a long time, to be able to align my life's work with my values. That's how I see it today. That sounds easy enough, but that wasn't so easy. It took me a long time, but now I really see my work as a calling. I feel called to do this work today in this time of human history, which is really working on climate change and doing it specifically in healthcare, partly because healthcare is part of the problem. So I just seem to have tremendous energy for that. It doesn't seem to go away. And I think this is a post hoc analysis, sort of, it's me thinking about this. I think it's because I'm not conflicted really about what I'm doing. And I'm not suggesting that anyone else is, but to have that sense of being aligned with what I feel is the most important work for me to do, and to be able to do it is, it kind of makes makes the problems go away in a way. Doesn't mean I don't have problems and challenges and work like a dog, but it just kind of keeps it in perspective.
It sounds like you have the real power of intrinsic motivation to keep going.
Yeah.
Because of that.
I don't understand that, but I think you're right. It just comes from somewhere.
It comes from inside you as opposed to external. Yeah. That's incredible. And so, Lynn, in your experience, what has propelled you when you're, stuck in a situation where you're like, I need to get through this? Like, what's an example of when that happened to you? Maybe something recent or even far back.
Yeah, I think having friends and family, like a really good support, has helped. Like recently, my father passed away a couple years ago, and during COVID and getting a new job out of school, it was kind of impactful. And I had a really good support system. They motivated me. I found really good support through that. I found that, creating different goals really helped my focus and drive, like during work or just in general. I found love in running, even though I'm not great at it. I still just go for it. Just finding different goals and ways to kind of make my life meaningful.
That's excellent advice, actually. I'm not going to take up running, but I think that's but I love that. So Monica, in the progression of your career, I imagine there have been a number of challenges, and some that you have control over and some that you don't. So what are some of the tools that you've implemented to get through those?
Well, if you think about any of our journey, right, like it has never been always a positive experience, right? Like we all grow stronger because of somebody saying no to us, or some of our wishes did not come true right away, but we had to work hard to get there. So it is always, good to have goals and longer term dreams, but remember all the small success you have endured, you have come across all through the way. That gives you that positive reinforcement of, yes, you have accomplished that, you have come this far, and you're not going to give up now. I always say thank you to people who have said no to me, because that always made me fight for what I was said no to. And I got that, and I said, hey, look, I got it now, right? Like that's the sense of accomplishment you feel. And because somebody said no, the fire in you burns more to get that and to say that, yes, I have gotten there. One of the first motivation is for me to be that role model I never had. That's kind of what pushed me from the childhood, being that first working woman in my family, first girl to leave family back in India to come to a new country all by myself. And when I come across something disheartening, I always think about that little girl did not fight through all this, now to come all this far and then give up. So always have that things you have fought for through your life, and keep that in your mind when something is not going your way. So you will find a way, right? If we are all adults, if somebody's saying no to you, still that motivation to fight for it is inside you. Outside forces can only tell no, but the power is within you to go get what you wanted. So never let those things get to you. Think of the positive things. Think of all the success you have had, and use that as a stepping stone to get where you want. So
finding your fire, right? Like find that fire within yourself. Keep going. Absolutely. Savannah.
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts on motivation. But before I do that, one of my favorite quotes during my time in student government and that's because in student government, you're trying to get a lot of things done, was don't tell me no, tell me how. And I could decide if I have enough time, energy, and bandwidth to do that. And then I can, make that decision over and over and over again. It's the how that sometimes will lead to the no, and we can work through that. But in terms of motivation, I would say that I'm motivated by the community that I came from. I came from a low-income community. I'm one of 10. I was adopted when I was in middle school and was a teen parent. I didn't graduate high school. Every barrier that you could possibly give yourself as a young person, or that the system, is designed to perpetuate, I dealt with. And I had a very strange career path. I worked at Walmart. I worked as a welder. I did that for a while until I was injured. And I was like, hey, I was a dental assistant, also a cake decorator, did all sorts of things. And I finally was at the point of, if I'm going to go back to school, I'm finally going to do what it is that I really want to do. And what I really wanted to do was create opportunities for other young women who grew up similar to how I did, and recognize that even though your circumstances may look that way, you can still do whatever it is that you want to do. And so I originally started out wanting to major in English, but I had a passion for US history because it helped me understand my experience through the lens of the history that came before me. And so I'm largely motivated by wanting to reach my community, and not just the Mexican American community, but young women of color, young people who grow up in low-income communities. It's really challenging. And so I do what I can. And another thing I'll say is that because I had such an interesting career path, and educational journey, I was like, okay, well, I've already wasted so much time. How can I make the biggest impact with the time in the workforce that I have left? And I was like, okay, government can do that. I can work at a higher level. I can make changes at this government level. And hopefully it can impact how government agencies go about their work to include the voices of people like myself. So before I was at the AGO, I was at the Student Achievement Council, and I did a lot of work with higher education and filling out financial aid applications and doing a lot of that work. And that was really fulfilling, and it definitely contributed to that motivating factor. And so I would say that because of that, my values naturally aligned with the careers that I was looking for. And when an opportunity came up at the AGO's office to do racial equity work throughout the agency, I immediately was like, I need to try. I didn't know if I qualified. It turns out they thought I did. But I put myself out there. And so every time I get stuck or it gets a little bit too difficult, I have to think about the communities that don't have a voice. And I somehow managed to get myself in there. And so I'm trying to like leave the back door open or something, like making space for others.
I think it's really incredible. You talk about the amount of experience that you've had in all the different areas. And it really does show that not everybody's path is like this one really, probably nobody's path is like completely planned out. And this is where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do. And I have this vision board of my career. I mean, you really had a lot of different experiences that contributed to where you ended up. And now you found your passion, which is pretty incredible.
They were valuable too. It was valuable education and learning as someone who worked at Walmart. It was valuable to be a welder and work in a different type of, sector. Those things were really valuable, and I use them still to this day.
That's amazing. So Shavner, you talked about comfort, challenge, and danger as being your zones, and challenge is the thing that sparked me when I was, when we were talking in the last question. So tell us a little bit more about being in that challenge zone and how you keep yourself out of the danger zone.
I'm not sure I always do, if I'm being honest. But how I keep myself in the challenge zone is, once I find my footing, or try to, I look for the next opportunity. I can't help but something inside me is always like, oh, what about this? What about that? Has anyone tried this? And it's just this, Monica put it really well. It's this fire inside that's like, what more can we do? And then I think Beth mentioned, I'm also impatient. I have a sense of urgency around every new idea. And so that naturally propels me right into the challenge zone and sometimes the danger zone borderline. But it's just, I think it's just part of who I've always been. I'm always looking for, where can we improve? How can we grow? What's the next best step for us as a team or myself? And so that's just, a natural, I'm always finding myself in the challenge zone.
And it's interesting because you almost describe it as if being in the challenge zone is your comfort zone.
It is my happy place. It is tough though. It's, my heart's always racing a little bit. My palms are sweaty, but it's so rewarding. I've had such a rewarding career, and like Savannah, I've done so many different things in the policy arena that I wouldn't have done if I hadn't just put myself out there. If I hadn't said, hi, how are you? My name is. That's how I got started in student government. Actually, my mom did that for me, but ever since then, I've been doing a lot of that myself. And so being able to just take that first step it pays back so much. And staying in the challenge zone and knowing your limits, really. I think knowing when to say, hey, I need to check on myself and take time for myself is so important. And I think, especially in a career like government affairs, public policy, so many of these others that move really quickly and have so many high demands, being able to take a step back and say, I've been in the challenge zone for so long, I'm not sure if I'm thriving or if I'm just surviving. And being able to check in with yourself, I think, is a really important tool.
Fantastic. So Whitney, you've been in broadcasting now for 20 years. More if you can't, because I'm sure you did stuff actually on campus as well. I want the investigative work that you do. That's sort of a new thing with local news, I think, that they've gotten into in the last few years. So I'm sure your journey has been really interesting, and just broadcast news in general, I think, is a really tough industry. So what has been your, what's been that thing that propels you forward and keeps you going in the face of what I'm sure is, occasional adversity?
I think it's different when you're starting out. The goal is just to get your foot in the door, right? Get someone to listen to you, to believe that you can do it, and to believe in you. And so that's the first challenge, is being willing to keep going, keep trying, even when all these news directors are telling you no, that there's someone better. Even before I graduated, there was one of my good friends in many of my same classes. She was a broadcast journalism student as well. And she was asking, like, have you started applying for jobs? What are you going to do if you can't find one? What are you going to do if you just can't get your first job? And honestly, it had never, I had never allowed myself to accept that as a possibility. Failure just wasn't an option. I just was going to, and it took me a while. It took me about 8 months to get my first job. I actually had like a meningitis scare my senior year at WSU. So I took a few months off before I started applying for jobs, but boy, I applied to so many broadcast jobs and, got rejected so many times. And then, Bismarck, North Dakota was the one that said, yeah, we think you can do this. And so I was thrilled about that, but that was my first challenge. And then the next challenge is keeping your foot in the door, staying relevant. And I think always it's kind of about finding your true north. What is it that you're going to keep focused on? And so for me in broadcast journalism, it's just finding the satisfaction of knowing that what I'm doing, it has an impact. It makes a difference. It's making a difference for families that we're talking about in our stories. It's making a difference and shining a light on problems that are affecting a lot of people in our communities. So that's my true north, is kind of keeping my eye on that and doing it because it matters. And it's never mattered more than it does right now. There is so much hate on social media, through email, people just around you. I mean, they're not even afraid to tell you to your face that they hate you anymore. And there's a lot of vitriol out there that we all are exposed to on a daily basis. And that has made things so much more difficult, but it's also made it that much more important. There's, I still don't understand why people create all of this misinformation and post it on Facebook and put it on Instagram, I guess just for the fun of misleading people. I really don't know, but it's a major problem out there, and it's something that we're trying to battle every single day. And again, when you talk about being resilient, it's about keeping your eye on the long game. What are you really trying to accomplish? What are you doing? And Monica, I 100% agree with what you said earlier. There's nothing more satisfying than proving someone wrong. And when they tell you no and you figure out a way to get it done, there's no better motivator than that.
Yeah, that problem of misinformation is definitely, it affects all of us in a very visceral way, I think. It's interesting, it's something you guys, it's interesting to hear all the common threads with you guys, like, don't take no for an answer. I loved what you said, Savannah, don't tell me no, tell me how. And by the way, I've taken like a bunch of notes of all the things you guys have said, because I'm so inspired by all of you. Speaking up for yourself, mutual trust, perseverance, authenticity, align your life's work with your values. I love, Shavnor, I love your comfort challenge. danger zones. I think we should make like a graphic for that and send it out to everybody. I think that's incredible. And it's funny when you talk about like your hands get all sweaty, you get all clammy and you're like, ah, what am I doing? But it's almost like that's the adrenaline saying you're go, 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 it's like your cheerleader. And Monica, I mean, you're talking about having, community support, and we have to uplift each other and support each other. It's not one woman's mission, it's all of us collectively, and all the work that all of you do has an impact on society. And you're tackling it in all different ways from all different directions, but it's all to make our lives better. So I have to thank you for all of the effort that you put in there, because we will all be better off because of it. I really want to get to a couple questions that came in for us. So I'm going to let you guys decide who wants to answer this. I'm not going to pick on people. So just unmute and go for it when you're ready. So there is a question. My status as a woman severely hinders my male leadership's perception of my capabilities. What are some good strategies to sell myself or alert folks to my experience and background? Such a great question.
I can take that.
Awesome.
This is something I did learn with experience and constant feedback from my well-wishers, right? Like I don't speak much, or I don't talk about my work so much. And I thought it was just my quality. And then the more I started learning about other women leaders, it is a common quality that we are taught to be humble and not brag about our work, so what has helped is one thing that how we are wired is we are afraid to ask for ourselves, even whether it's a salary negotiation or talking about our work, but we are wired to be very upfront about fighting for others, fighting for a cause, fighting for your team, right? So the way I have put myself, okay, I'm not bragging about me, but I'm bragging about my team. I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for my team, or the like young women in STEM who are looking up to me, and I want to set an example for them. So that has helped me come out of that, like my natural comfort zone of talking about myself is bragging. That's not how you're supposed to be, right? That's where my natural settings are. So I'm changing my brain settings to say, you're not fighting for you. You're not talking for yourself. You're not being bragging here or selfish here. You are fighting for your team. You want to make sure your team's efforts are well known in a bigger environment. So that's how I have rewired myself to come out of my my natural settings.
I would just add to that that's a tricky position to be in, and I think we've all encountered that in various different ways somewhere along our journey. I would say, don't be afraid to speak up for yourself, but also don't be afraid to go somewhere that is going to foster you in a better way. Don't be afraid to just say, I'm no longer growing here. So, you don't have to change their mind. You may not be able to. They may never get on board and understand your value as a woman. And that's okay. That's going to be their journey. And eventually maybe they'll figure it out. Maybe they won't, but you don't have to be hindered and held down by that. Go find a place where you can grow and blossom.
100% agree. If I could just keep going with that, I'm not just a woman, I'm a Black woman. And so I've often encountered experiences where I've come up against, some people have just decided to see you and your work in a way that doesn't align with the reality of the situation. And so just to just amplify what you said, you've got to go to a table that doesn't just tolerate you, but celebrates you and the work that you bring. And I know we've all shared some of those commonalities, and I just, there are practical solutions sometimes that can help move those conversations forward. But we talked about resiliency earlier, and it's not always how much you can take, right? It's sometimes bringing in that discernment that says, I'm not being served here. And so where can I take myself that I can go be the best, most authentic version of myself? And so sometimes that does mean finding something else. So I just 100% that. And then just one of the more practical solutions I've tried in the past is finding someone who advocates on your behalf in those rooms that you are not in, who can be an ally to you, who might be able to find more common ground with those people who don't see you and don't see your work and don't hear you. Sometimes that strategy works and sometimes it doesn't, but I think it's one that you can try to apply. But again, really being able to be honest with yourself if you're in a space that, you know, cherishes you.
I think that I think I agree with you. Having an advocate is really important. And I think it's also important to know that your advocate does not have to be another woman. Right. You can absolutely have a trusted male colleague who's willing and eager to advocate on your behalf as well. Beth, you have some additional thoughts on this?
Yeah, I have a maybe an odd perspective, and it's because I realized at some point, well, first of all, I realized when I was a nurse with a mortgage, when I bought my first house, I realized I am the most average person in America, because nursing is very, very common profession for women, and a lot of people have a mortgage. And that gave me a certain freedom. It meant that I didn't have to really try to be average or try to be normal, try to be, you know, within the expected norms. So it gave me a certain sense of freedom to have these big ideas. And then another thing I realized, well, it took me a while, 20 years probably into my career, is that I'm worked mostly with women. I mean, nursing is mostly women. Healthcare is mostly women. And what that taught me, I think, was that the world is sane, the world is reasonable, the world is tolerant, and there's room for kindness. And so when I'm in an environment that isn't like that, rather than, I mean, I think that just in this conversation, I'm thinking this might be what I'm coming to. My reaction is not, oh, there's something wrong with me. My reaction is, hey, this is not a sane, healthy, supportive situation here. And so I think that was kind of good training, you know, to be working with essentially, I mean, been fortunate to work with essentially healthy people most of my time. And honestly, most of them have been women. It's not that I don't have marvelous men in my life that I work with, and also non-binary people. But I just reflect on that now in our conversation. Thank you.
No, that's excellent. Before I move on to the next question, Lynn, Savannah, I just want to give you an opportunity if there's something you wanted to add. And it's totally okay if you don't.
I think that you should have your elevator pitches ready. You practice them with a trusted friend so you can get the wording down and it can be real concise. To simply say, absolutely, I have experience in that. I did X, Y, and Z at this place. We could definitely move forward with that. Like those kinds of, you have to just kind of get used to slipping that into the conversation and practice them, because it doesn't always feel natural in the beginning. And after a while, you'll get used to it. And once you're able to practice that and then practice on behalf of the people on your team, they'll pick up that habit and they'll do the same. Oh, I didn't write this. So-and-so wrote this. They did a great job. Those types of things are cultural norms that you can set as a leader on your team.
And that's a great definition of leadership as well, really showing others how to do that themselves, and just, yeah, being a role model. And that's amazing. Lynn, I'll give you the chance. I'll give you the last word on this. If you'd like it.
I definitely agree with Whitney. If you don't feel like you have to push to try to kind of make your way to find somewhere that actually values you. And that's kind of where what I did as I left and joined a new company, is because I wanted someone to actually value my work and actually, you know, promote my work essentially. So I definitely agree with what Whitney said.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's interesting because this moves it to another question that we have from the audience. And for the introverts on the panel, what advice or lessons learned do you have for excelling in what are typically extrovert-oriented workplaces in the US, and how to not burn out in them? And it just made my heart happy that Lynn was the first one to unmute.
I think just knowing what your boundaries are. I think boundaries are really important. If you need like some quiet time, you should try to block something on your calendar, or just find your quiet space to let your like brain think, or just let your emotions kind of settle. I know it can be kind of hard, especially if you're working in person after maybe working remotely full time for a while. It's kind of overwhelming to be surrounded by so many people or having back-to-back meetings. So just knowing your boundaries and when to say no. I think that was something that was already brought up, is when to say no. So I think that was my main tip for that.
Let me ask you a follow-up to that. Because how important is it that you communicate the boundaries to your coworkers, and how do you do that effectively?
I think it's definitely important to communicate them. I think just telling them like, hey, or just be honest. I don't know if that's the best approach for everyone, but for my coworkers now, it's, I think, telling them honestly, like, hey, I just need a minute, or I just need 10 minutes to kind of collect my thoughts, or just separate yourself from the situation. Because if you kind of push it and not be upfront about it, it could lead into another issue later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. How about our other introverts?
I was just going to say that it's really important, and I found this took me a long time to learn, but it's okay to give yourself permission to be who you are. You don't have to change yourself to become an extrovert. You don't have to change yourself to become like those people who are bubbly and social butterflies and run around and can make conversation easily with anyone that they meet. It's okay to be exactly who you are, and to give yourself that allowance, I think, is really critical. I think there's nothing wrong with, trying to better yourself and make, give yourself goals, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that so many things in society tell us that we have to be a certain way. And the answer is you don't. You can still find success. You can still be great at your job, and you can find people who love and accept you just as you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It does bring up another question about introverts. Introverts and extroverts. COVID and work from home really benefited a lot of folks who consider themselves introverts, because they could easily find their quiet time, as Lynn mentioned, stepping outside, taking their dog for a walk, whatever, and just kind of finding that peace without really having those judging eyes on you. Now that we're getting ready to go back into the office, because a lot of companies are now changing that mentality. And Monica, maybe you have some thoughts on this, because I think as an executive leader, you probably have been involved in conversations like this. How do you, if you have somebody who's an introvert who's coming back into the office and kind of getting in that really uncomfortable, I did so well when I was at home, and now I have to be with all these people. How do people balance that?
So, Katie, the role needs both introvert and extrovert, right? Like, definitely it is a mix, right? Like, usually the introverts are, quiet in the meeting, but if you prompt them for what their thoughts are, they bring in great ideas into the conversation. So definitely the role needs both, like it was mentioned, don't change yourself, be who you are, and the role needs all kinds of mind here. When it comes to getting back to office, it is a slow step process, right? Because given a 2-year break of being in the office and then suddenly switching, it has to be a slow step process. And some companies have a different, every company has a different policy on how they are bringing them back. But making it gradual, or making it, that's the approach I'm doing with my team, at least, right? Like not all 5 days, but pick a day or pick 2 days in a week where everybody in the team also comes there, so they have some kind of a connection when they are in the office. And at the same time, they get the rest of the time where they have that recharging time in a better way, because they're working from where they are and not in the office. It is definitely a balance, and it has to be done by the leadership, how it has to be gradually introduced, or maybe leave it up to the team on if it is going to be 2 days or 3 days or 50%, however they want to do that. So, with COVID, definitely we all learned how technology can help, right? Like, so many of my conferences happened on Teams and Zoom in the last 2 years. So we're definitely saving on travel time, saving on, I stand for sustainability. So less airplane time, less fuel emission, right? So there are a lot of benefits. We learned that we can do our work without travel, without being there in person. But some people do miss the human connection, and human connection is important because we are social beings. So we have to find the right mix.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think the transitioning back slowly is probably, rather than ripping off the Band-Aid and getting everybody back in there, definitely the way to go for sure. Any other thoughts there before I pivot to what's probably going to be our last question? All right. Oh, so actually on that same topic, and I should have read this before I asked that last question. But so further on the telework hybrid, you know, half and half, sometimes in the office and sometimes not. How do you adjust, or what adjustments do you need to make to your leadership style to, you know, lead people who are not present physically but are present in other ways? How do you balance all of that?
I can go ahead and start.
Yeah,
I would
please, Savannah. Yeah.
Since the beginning, it feels like over communicating, checking in with people. A lot of things that are hard to. So I graduated May 2020, which was a tough time to find a job. I luckily found a job at the Student Achievement Council the day that announced his hiring freeze. And so my entire professional work life has been over Zoom. Now at the AGO, we do have a hybrid model where we go in 2 days a week. And I would say, I lost my train of thought. I don't know where it went.
So I'll try and seed it back. So managing people, some who are physically present, some who are present online, and how do you exhibit your leadership skills with those different groups of people?
Yeah, depending on your team says, you're going to have to customize that to people. Some people are going to need over communication. They're going to have more questions. Other people, especially people who have been part of the team before that hybrid environment, they're going to be a little bit more, they have more relationships. They're going to be a little bit more ready to have informal conversations, or to send someone a quick chat that might feel really easy because that's something that they've done before, but you have people that don't necessarily feel comfortable. So you can let them know, you reaffirm, like, it's okay if you send me a jabber at any time of the day. When you're in the office, picking up the phone to call someone whenever is okay. You could definitely do that. Me as a millennial, I feel really weird calling someone on the phone. But I've had people say, my preferred way of communication is a phone call. So if you have something, just pick up the phone and call me. And if I don't answer, I can call you back. Or if you prefer, I could send you a message back. Having those kind of communication standards and being really clear about them, I think are going to be really important to prepare your team and doing the work. Another thing I'll say is that I do a lot of projects with different divisions, and I'm not working with them every day. And then out of nowhere, we're working on a big project together. And so you have the same project management skills that you would use to make sure that people are included, their voices are included. You can take some of that and translate it into your everyday work with members of your own team or members of leadership that you're working with.
No, that's fantastic advice. Any other observations on this? The challenge of managing distributed team, even distributed teams, right? Even if everybody's in the office, but they're in different offices, right? So you're not sitting with them. Does anybody have that situation? All right.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, because Providence is so spread out from Alaska to Lubbock, Texas, and we have a major tech center in Hyderabad, India, and I work with folks in India at least three times a week. I think what Savannah was saying is really true. Figure out what is it that people need to feel informed about, what the expectation is, supported, and engaged, and including me. You know, what me or another leader. What do we need to hear from folks when we can't see them or be close? So. I mean, there are so many advantages to working remotely, including more efficiency. People have better work-life balance sometimes not. People have more flexibility. So there's lots of great things about it. And also, if not kind of held together, it can feel like it's disintegrating a little bit. So I really think it's a lot about communications and being intentionally supportive.
Absolutely. No, and I like what both of you guys are saying too about kind of customizing depending on the person, right? And that gets into something that somebody said earlier about servant leadership, right? That's like meeting people where they are, kind of thing, which is really helpful. I lied when I said it might be our last question, by the way. So I've got more. I misread the time. So I have another question. I think this one's super interesting. So any advice for a 40-year-old woman who is just starting out in a career and feels pressure to make up time? This is such a great question because there's so many women re-entering the workforce after raising their families or taking a break, or just even getting a late start for whatever other reason, or starting a new career. Shavana.
I think it's a really great question. I also want to just gently push back on the question, because where does the catch up come from? What's the end of the race? I'm only bringing up the reframe only because sometimes even in my career, I'm like, I'm so far behind. I don't have this. I haven't done that. I haven't accomplished something like, and I'm like, who am I? It's just me, team of one against whatever my imagination and my challenge zone can get to. So I don't, aside from putting yourself in your challenge zone constantly, I don't have any advice, but just a reframe and a little bit of a gentle challenge to just take a moment and really think about what the race looks like for you and evaluate where that pressure might be coming from. It's a very solid question, and I ask myself that question too, but I also gently push back against myself.
I'd like to jump in because I, for a long time, felt like I needed to catch up, having a different career path, and going back to school as an adult and a parent. I got my bachelor's degree when I was 30. So I did feel like I needed to catch up. And at the time, in the beginning, I was like, well, where can I have the most impact? I want to be able to, like I talked about earlier, have a positive impact on low-income communities of color. And I was really trying to be strategic. And I was like, I could help at like the social work level. I can help, a handful of people, maybe a day or a week. And then I was thinking about the emotional labor that is involved with that. And I was like, I don't know if that's for me. But, and so I was thinking, well, what else could I do? What skills do I have? And how else can I contribute and scale that? How can I scale that? And for me, the answer for catching up, to take on your point, right, about do we need to catch up, was finding an area where I can have a broader impact. Because to me, I was like, I want to do more. And then I kind of, this idea of a race or to being catching up, I like to think of my work now after some time passed, as time has passed, I no longer feel like I need to catch up or do more. But I feel like I want to have a lifetime of advocacy. And so I think about what am I equipped to do now? And where I live, what I'm capable of with the experience that I have so far. And then I think, okay, I'm positioned to do what I'm doing now at the AGO. But 5 years from now, it might look like I am at that social worker level. Or maybe you talk about introvert or extrovert. Maybe I'm done talking to people. Maybe I'm doing something in the background. Maybe I completely switch it up and I'd like decide I want to go back for IT. I keep those options always open for me, because to me, the goal is a lifetime of advocacy, and I can contribute to that lifetime of advocacy in any way that makes sense to me in that moment of my life, with the skills that I have and the needs that I have as an individual. So I recognize the question. I lived with that for a long time. And I made some strategic career decisions based off of that, because I wanted to have a high level of impact. And so you could think about it in multiple ways.
Excellent advice. Beth.
Yeah, I was just going to, similarly, the questioner used the word urgency, and that can be a real strength. I mean, I use that, Shavner used that. That can be drive and purpose and intensity and clarity, and let's not waste time. So maybe you can turn that sense of feeling behind into a sense of strength because you're driven.
Yeah, that's excellent. It's funny, years ago, I worked in retail, and which is funny because I work for Walmart now, and it's kind of retail, but it's on the tech side, so it all came together. But when we were hiring, one of the things that we looked at was if you were hiring someone, let's call it a parent who has been at home raising kids for the last 10, 15 years, it's not that they have no experience. they're a CPA, they're logistics, they're, you know, they know how to do a lot of things. And so I think also don't discount that you actually bring a ton of things to the table, and all you need to do is look at what you've done on a daily basis for whatever that was. It could be other jobs that aren't connected to the career you're going to now, but you can absolutely inventory those skills and say, here's where they apply. And so, yeah, absolutely. So we are running down on the clock, but I'm going to mix up the script a little bit and give each of you an opportunity to offer just some closing thoughts. Just overall, through this whole conversation, like, what's the summary for you? What do you want people to leave? What nuggets of wisdom do you want people to leave with? And I'll go back to the beginning and I'll start with Lynn.
Well, I guess find as many opportunities you can, then just try to challenge yourself. I liked Shavner's advice. I think that's a really good point, to challenge yourself and make yourself a little bit uncomfortable with not knowing what exactly you're facing, but I think to just go forth with it and just be as resilient as you can.
Excellent. Monica.
So for all the young professionals out there, my word of advice is, women can have it all, right? Do not think that you have to give up one part of personal life to have a great professional career, or you have to give up your professional career to have a good personal life. The big thing is you have to define what that all is, right? You have to define what that life balance is, because what is the balance for somebody else? What is having everything all for somebody else is not your definition. You define what that is, right? I was not in every PTA meeting, but I ran math clubs for my sons. So that is where I was present as a parent, but I never knew their friends' parents' names and everything, right? So find what your all is, and you can have it all. Do not give up one for the other. And go Cougs.
And go Cougs, absolutely. Always go Cougs. Savannah.
I would say for the students in this space, take advantage of all the leadership opportunities. You can walk in with the student title and you're given grace, you're given access, you're given opportunities to learn and speak with people and learn from people. So if you're a student and there's an opportunity to get involved, take it. You'll make a lot of friends, you'll learn a lot, and the network that you build is extremely valuable. I was able to get a job in the very beginning of the pandemic because I was involved with the Washington Student Association, and I was involved in student government, and those people advocated on my behalf when I didn't even know that they were having conversations about opportunities, right? So build your network and take those opportunities. And for my young professionals and my other professionals who are further in their careers, I got some advice from one of my professors when I was a student, and I think it was my senior year, and there was all of these different opportunities, and I felt like I needed to say yes to everything. Like if I said no to something, that I was going to miss out. And learning when to say no is important. But she specifically said, we've gotten to the point where you get to be picky, because everybody wants you to participate. Be picky. What do you want to do? So think about that. Be picky. Think about what you want to do, and choose you sometimes. You can do that.
I love that. I'm going to be picky. Love it. But Beth.
Well, it's really great to hear all of our points of views and life stories and career stories. And I think that tells me that there's lots of ways to be successful, lots of ways to apply ourselves in different settings. And I would like to say that I would like to encourage the listeners to have faith. If you keep after it, if you're determined and you don't give up and you keep putting one foot ahead of the other, things may work out. I'm not saying there's guarantees, but they really may. And also when things don't work out, that can be a real time to reflect and reevaluate and realign, repurpose yourself. And that, just to say once again, I think it's really great when people can find, what I use the term your calling, or whatever it is that makes you feel like you are doing what you are meant to do. And I know that not everyone may have the chance to do that, but I think the first step in doing so is figuring out what that is. Saying, what is it that I care about? What is it that I want to work many, many hours on? What is it that I will feel good about? Or what is it that I would really regret if I didn't address in this life? I think that can be incredibly energizing and satisfying and also fun.
Fantastic. Shavana?
I totally agree with Beth. Finding that passion. I mean, it's to the last question we had. It's going to be something that helps guide you. And when there are so many people asking you to do something, or when there's so many opportunities and you don't know which way to go, I think finding that passion and being true to your most authentic self will help guide you and put you in spaces, whether because you've had to go to a different table or because the table is open. You get to go to spaces where you're celebrated. And I think that that's so important in our journeys as we move through life. But one more thing I just wanted to add is that from hearing all of our stories, we're just so powerful. We're so inspirational. I'm motivated and inspired by the people on this panel. It's just been such an honor. And, I just want to say thank you. And one more thing I'll leave you with is that when all those no's are coming at you and you're wondering if you're in the wrong space or the right space, that it's sometimes okay to take a step back and look at those as maybe redirections and to see how maybe you can win elsewhere and to get it all that way.
Absolutely. And Whitney, last but certainly not least.
I think one of the biggest things that has served me well is to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's really hard to keep going when everything is coming at you and telling you it's not going to work. And I think that it's really difficult to sometimes not get distracted, but when you have a goal, whatever that is in your career, to just, as hard as it is, to keep remembering what it is you're working for. Why are you doing this? What got you started in the first place? There was a point in your life that this really mattered and you took that first step because this is really where you wanted to go. And it's okay to reevaluate and change your goals. That's totally fine. But to remember what you're working for. There are so many circumstances that come along in life. Promotions take far longer than you think they should to come along, and you just keep working and working and thinking, is this ever going to happen? Am I ever going to get there? And, I think that leaders understand the value of just keep going. Cougs keep going, leaders keep going, and, kind of choose I've heard this before where you choose your hard. It's hard to be a leader. It's hard to be a follower. Which one do you want to do? It's hard to keep going. It's hard to quit. It's really hard to feel that bitter taste of not reaching your goals. So keep yourself reminded all the time of what it is that got you started, whatever it takes. If you put sticky notes all over the place, if you have pictures that motivate you, whatever that is, find that thing that keeps you on course. It's not going to be a straight line for sure. We can already tell you that. It's going to wind around. You're going to go backwards sometimes. It's going to be up. It's going to be down. But eventually, I think you can get to where you're going. And the reward is in that topsy-turvy journey that got you there. So just keep going.
Absolutely. Well, we are out of time, but I could keep going for hours listening to all of your sage advice, and you're all at different places in your career. You are extraordinary representatives of WSU and for your individual campuses. Of course, we are all one WSU. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for all of you who have participated, asked questions, kept the chat going. It's just been scrolling by the whole time. I know you ladies are all just incredibly inspirational, and we really appreciate you taking the time today with us. So thank you, everybody. And I'm sorry to say, but this concludes our event. So until next year, we'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.